anyone in private practice or even corporate practice needs to soak up as much of this as they can. And of course, I'm biased here, but there's also a reason why I got into this in the first place, is this provided huge value for me early on in my practice. I was not gifted with mentorship right out of the gate. I had to go seek it out for myself, and nor did I have any clue about running a practice or, to be honest with you, orthodontics. When we first come out, we know enough not to get sued, but we're not master clinicians.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast. I'm Dr. Glenn Krieger, your host, and today we've got our two-time returning champion, Dr. Andy Sarpotdar. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Glenn. Good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you back. I was listening to our first podcast, which seems like yesterday, but was actually over 2 years ago. I think when we were talking, it was sort of most of us were starting to emerge from COVID, our shutdowns, our lockdowns. You talked a great deal about the things you learned, and it was really, really great stuff we talked about that day. And I can't wait to continue some of our conversations today. So I'll let you start with maybe an update. I know you've had some changes in your life. Be a proud papa.
Oh my gosh.
Tell everybody a little bit about
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we just welcomed our first daughter into the world. Her name is Chloe, and she was born on September 11th, believe it or not, 2022, which was the date that I was really, really hoping to avoid. We had an inducement date on September 10th, and it just kept getting pushed back and back because of just backlog in the hospital. And then sure enough, September 11th, she just popped out on her own. So I tried to convince my wife to hold her in, but it just happened.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Not well.
Yeah. Hold her in. I don't know what she's supposed to do, but hey, you know what? Any day a child is born is a joyous day. You know,
it was one of the best days of my life. That's for sure.
Yeah. I have to admit, I'm not embarrassed of this, but not a lot of people know this. The day that our oldest was born was one of the worst days of my life.
Really?
It was terrible. It was terrible. Not because it was gross, but you have these dreams. My wife always had these sort of visions of, we have to buy this house. So when our daughter has her prom and she walks down the stairs, right? She had these visions of all these great things and these moments in her life that would occur. I had a vision about what it would be like on the day our first was born, and it would be this great day, and we'd go in and bluebirds would be singing, and the doctor would take the baby, and it turned out to be 18 plus hours of actual labor, 18 plus hours.
My gosh.
My wife was bleeding out. They kept filling her with bags of fluid. Her face looked like it's the moon because she was so filled with fluid. Her blood pressure at one point, I swear to you, was like 60 over 30. I honestly thought I was going to lose my wife and my daughter on the same day. And thank God, Dr. Levine, I'm giving you a shout out here. If not for him, I don't know what would have happened. We have a healthy baby girl who's now 23, and my wife did great. But I got to tell you, that was the most brutal day of my entire life. And so for those of you out there who had a great birthing experience, God bless you all. I'm very happy for you. But man,
I can't imagine your wife had a very good day either.
Hers was excellent. That's she had an epidural. She was sitting in bed, and she didn't know the first thing about medicine. So, when the nurses are coming in and you can see that look in their faces of they're a little nervous. My wife didn't catch any of it. She was just sitting, how you doing, sweetie? Oh, great. It's good. Feeling a little
I would
pressure.
love to get her perspective on that, Glenn. I was joking with my brother who just had a son recently as well. And, he calls me from the hospital and they had like a 36-hour delivery. It was something absolutely ridiculous. Gosh. And, most dads can relate. I'm probably going to get hit for saying this, but, we're there to be very supportive. But there's some hardship involved with us too. We're sleeping on the floor for 36 hours. We got to be alert, awake. A lot of this stuff that we can't really complain about. Anyway, that's what my brother called me about. And as the hours ticked on, he's just like, I just need to talk to someone who understands because I can't talk to my wife. And, we say any of that, and absolutely it is completely overshadowed by everything that our wives go through. And, Jenny was an absolute trooper. This was not the easiest delivery. She had some complications afterwards. Plus, she's an orthodontist as well, running her own business, going through all of this from her bed the next 6 weeks. So,
wow.
Yeah, they definitely have the lion's share of it, but that's not to say that, we go through our stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will tell you, on that day, my wife literally, it was like Martin Short. He did a movie years ago where he gets stung by a bee and he's swelled up huge and he's in the back of a plane and he doesn't realize that he's swelled up huge from an allergic reaction. And so Danny Glover turns to him and goes, "How are you doing?" He goes, "Fine. And you?" And my wife was exactly that way. I'm like, "How are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm great. How are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing great, sweetie. Yeah, I'll be right back." As I run to the bathroom, 30, literally, I think I counted 18 times I went to the restroom that day because it was so. And when it was over, thankfully, we had a beautiful baby and it worked out well. And God bless our twins who came 3.5 years later for C-section, because that was like 2 minutes, everything was over. And my wife said she would take that. My wife said to this day, she would take that all day long over her first labor. So I'm just thrilled that you got Chloe. And September 11th is a day that now brings happiness in some small way to me too, because I know that she's born on that. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate that.
Just being honest. We got so much to talk about, and let's talk a little bit about Pearls. Mother of Pearls Conference, MOPC, the Pearls Facebook group, of which you have a pretty big interest in, that you play a big role going forward with it.
Sure.
The last time we chatted, I don't expect you to remember the whole conversation. We spent a huge amount of time talking about all of the malevolent operators out there who were doing what they could to just destroy the groups, to say nasty things, to attack people. And thankfully, at least from my perspective, I think the online culture has changed a dramatic amount. You guys deal predominantly with clinical stuff. I don't bring a lot of clinical into Orthopreneurs. And last time you said it best, that clinical is like people's religion, right? Like they buy into it so deeply. I use this bracket, I use this approach, this is my class 2 corrector. And people dig their heels in and get really emotional over it. With management, it's more of like, I'm no expert, this is how I do it. And it doesn't seem like people get dug in as much. Do you feel like the culture online has become a lot more social, a lot more friendly? And I think in the last couple of years, a lot of the malevolent operators sort of left a number of the groups and went and did their own thing. And so they're off on the farm, fenced in, shooting cattle over there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think that I've definitely noticed a change. There was a time when you're running orthodontic pearls where it would just consume me trying to rein this stuff in and keep things collegial, keep things focused on the issue and not focused on ad hominem attacks or getting personal about things. It was absolutely exhausting. And I think you kind of nailed it there. It's not, I can't comment that is completely gone. I personally believe that it is not, but it has definitely left the mainstream groups and the groups that I have been a part of. So that includes Orthodontic Pearls, Ortho 2.0, your group, Digital Orthodontist. All of these seem to have taken a much different trajectory. That's not to say that we don't want to see conflict. Of course, we want to mind that conflict. We want to be free to discuss things, but do so in a collegial environment so that we can actually learn and not just convince other people that we're right.
Absolutely. And it's funny on social media, like you'd think that like by now, especially after COVID, that people would realize that you're never going to convince anybody of anything on social media. Like, you could have like the first person who invented fire, like holding out their flame, and somebody would attack them and go, "What do you need it for? It doesn't work. I doubt it's true." And I think a lot of people have also realized you're not going to convince somebody else of their situation. So just move on and get past it. And what I do find interesting, and I'd love to again get your opinion on it, is I had somebody, you said it again. I'm going to quote you because you said it perfectly on the last interview 2 years ago. People think that as moderators of groups or administrators, we're sitting in front of our computers, staring at every post, every second of the day. And, Andy comes into my group and posts, "I hate all you, Southern or Texas orthodontists. You guys suck. You're the worst ever. I would never let a Texas orthodontist treat me." And that Glenn, one of the moderators of of Orthopreneurs, is standing there looking over and goes, "Oh, boom, solved it." Like, some ray gun shoots it out of the air. And I don't think people realize or give leeway if you will,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
moderators into the group. I had a person recently write to me, we're recording all of this during the Middle Eastern conflict, of which I am not going to bring up any position one way or the other. That's not the point. But there's obviously a lot of emotions involved in that
Yeah.
discussion. And unbeknownst to me, while I was out actually treating patients, sorry, folks, someone posted something in favor of one side. And
Wow.
apparently, unbeknownst to me, this whole time it started going back and forth. And I had people writing, one person in particular who wrote to me, hey, you need to remove it right now. If you don't remove it right now, I'm going to leave the group forever. I'm leaving Orthopreneurs and I'm going to tell all my friends about it too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
lighten up, Francis. Like,
Yeah.
chill,
Yeah.
chill out. And so, do you ever run into that where people think that like it's your responsibility to be monitoring these conversations 24/7, every second, and God help you if you're not doing that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that sounds like something I would say, that we're expected to be this omnipotent, omniscient being, just aware of everything and doing what is right. But who really decides what is right? That's one issue.
Right.
We've taken the stance of not necessarily blanket neutrality, but as long as you make your case in a very logical, straightforward way, you're not trying to sell something, you're not openly trying to deceive. Let's discuss that. I believe that if you put up any kind of idea, we can pick it apart in the comments and probably get to not necessarily a consensus, but get all of the information out there, and anyone reading this thread can make up their own minds. Or if they don't like the subject material, just scroll past it. Politics, of course, we stay completely out of. That just has no
Yeah.
place for me in an orthodontic forum. I think we get enough of that on basically every other site we can go on to. So, but again, as you mentioned, or as you quoted, the politics of orthodontics have become very polarizing, and even those can get very heated and personal.
Yeah. Yeah. But you do a great job of moderating it. And I, for one, don't mind if people want to sell in Orthopreneurs, as long as, and I know you guys feel the same way, as long as they're a
Sure,
contributing member of society, right? If they're part of the
exactly.
tribe, like, for guys like you or Teeters, if they want to come in, Chris Teeters, don't mean
Yeah.
to disrespect him to those out there. If they want, you'll say, hey, do you mind if we post something on Mother of Pearls conference? No, not at all.
Yeah.
You've allowed me to post things for Orthopreneurs. People will come in, Maz and Jonathan. I got no problem
Sure.
when Maz or Kyle Fagala posting something, or any number of people, because they're contributors to the overall voice, if you will.
Yes.
You feel the same way?
Oh, absolutely. We don't want people coming on. I mean, there's been some examples where someone will make their very first post about
Right.
some company that they just clearly have some sort of contract with. Uh, we ask that if you're posting anything that has any sort of sales implications, number one, just disclose any financial interest if there is one. Most of the time, it's pretty obvious. People are just pitching their own podcast or product or something. It's very, very transparent. And then just seek permission first. So part of the reason why is we want to titrate the amount of sales pitches that go into a forum. We want it to be mostly about organic discussion. As soon as a forum becomes all sales pitch, I feel like it
Right.
starts to lose a lot of value. So we are careful about how much of that we put out there,
Right.
but we don't really take sides when it comes to these things. Like, if you're genuine and you're disclosing and you're a contributing member of the forum, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these products have value as well, right?
I remember in Digital
Yeah,
Orthodontist, probably, I think you were on that thread with me as well, where someone came in,
I think
hi,
so.
I'm so and so. I'm an
Yeah,
orthodontist. I own this practice. And by the way, today
yeah,
only, if you buy this, you.
yep.
And everybody was like,
May,
Kyle was so good with it. His answer was
he
something along
was.
the lines of like, sounds very interesting. We'd appreciate if you would tell us more about it, perhaps. Right. I was like,
Right.
you're a more patient man than me, Kyle.
Oh
But
yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about Mother of Pearls Conference, right?
Sure.
MOPC. I've been to one. It's unfortunate because oftentimes it's around the time of year where I've got so many other commitments with Jewish holidays, or I've got to travel.
Sure.
And I really do love it. And everybody out there should know, as we mentioned last time, there is no antagonistic relationship at all between myself and anybody from the Orthodontic Pearls group. As a matter of fact, I love all you guys. I think you're amazing. And so when you do MOPC, we talked about this ahead of time. What are some of the biggest challenges you face? If you could snap your fingers and make things change, right? Because I want to give a little behind the scenes look to people out there for putting together
Sure.
a conference. What are some of the things that are some of the bigger challenges you face when you're putting it together?
Well, logistics of a conference are always part of I would say the most challenging aspect. Making sure that you have the venue locked down, that you've gotten the right deposit in there, and that you're hitting all of your deadlines on time. There's always there's points of no return, so to speak. So you put a deposit down on a venue, maybe it's this big and you need to fill the venue, so you have a point of no return. If you haven't gotten this right number of tickets by then, you can go back, and then sometimes it comes down to a leap of faith. And Mother of Pearls has always been very lucky that way, that we've had the interest that we've had and have never had any of those issues. But it's still kind of stressful. That's your own money on the line that you're throwing at that. um, Coordinating vendors is also one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
A lot of the revenue of a meeting comes from vendor sponsors,
Right.
and we're not just providing value for our doctors and for the team members that come along. We are providing value for that other side, for the vendors as well. So coordinating that in such a way that doesn't detract from the value of the conference, while also providing the vendors quality time, quality exposure to explain what they're about and get in front of people, that can be a challenge as well. One of the things that Mother of Pearls has done is we set up our food in a certain way so that you organically walk through the vendor halls, you tend to mingle. It's not pushing people. We're not saying you have to go see these vendors or, shoving them in your face, because I feel like that's counterproductive, but
Right.
just organically finding ways to create exposure that is going to be valuable both to vendors and the participants.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. It's the two things that drive me crazy, and I love your feedback. Again, nobody out there would know this stuff, but it is maddening to me that at the end of the game, you hit all the numbers you needed to make the meeting successful. But why can't people just make it so much easier and actually register more than a month in advance?
Oh
Right?
my
Like,
gosh, I know. Yeah.
isn't that the people who are listening, okay, on behalf of Mother of Pearls, on behalf of the Orthopreneurs Summit, on behalf of every meeting in the AAO as well, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you guys do not realize the stress you put on meeting organizers and how much better your event would be as an attendee if you would just, instead of registering for the October 1st Mother of Pearls event on September 1st or September 15th, if you would only register in November or December of the year earlier. And don't tell me you don't know
Sure.
your schedule in advance. You do, right? Am I right
Yeah.
here, Andy?
Well, hey, it's about priorities, isn't it, Glenn? Your
Yeah.
priorities are always going to get met, and this is something that I spoke about at our most recent Mother of Pearls conference. Was, if you commit to your priorities, everything else doesn't matter, or at least it
Right.
doesn't matter as much as those. So if it is a priority for you to go to one of these meetings, and personally, I think that these are huge value. I think anyone in private practice or even corporate practice needs to soak up as much of this as they can. And of course, I'm biased here, but there's also a reason why I got into this in the first place. Is this provided huge value for me early on in my practice. I was not gifted with mentorship right out of the gate. I had to go seek it out for myself. Nor did I have any clue about running a practice, or, to be honest with you, orthodontics. When we first come out, we know enough not to get sued, but we're not master clinicians. Going to these meetings and going face to face with people, the people that we're seeing online, is just a completely different game. And I think that these should be a priority, and it should be worth scheduling ahead of time. And again, don't just do it to make our lives easier, but do it because it should be a priority, and work everything else around there. You'll find a way.
And the second thing, again, people, I'm trying to educate you. Andy, I'd love your feedback on this one as well. When you book your hotel, book the hotel when the event is happening. You hear him laughing already. We didn't talk about this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what you don't realize is that in order for Mother of Pearls conference to happen, in order for Orthopreneurs Summit to happen, in any meeting typically, they don't give you the ballroom. You have to get the
Yeah.
ballroom by guaranteeing a certain number of rooms. And so Andy
Yeah.
and his cohorts are on the hook for every room that they've signed on. So when you say, I'm not going to stay at the Sheraton because I'm a Marriott points member, so I'm going to stay over at the Marriott across the street. That's one less hotel room that they've sold, which means if they don't sell enough, it comes out of their pocket. And so just bite the
Oh,
bullet
sure.
for 2 days and stay at the hotel where they're booking it. Right. We always sell at our room block, but it's like, come on, people. Do you agree with that,
Oh,
Andy?
yeah. Well, I do. And I don't think it's just for our benefit. I think that as an attendee, even when I'm not running a meeting, I always make it a priority to go to the venue hotel because it's just so much more convenient. A lot of the networking takes place around the lectures. You go all day and you're learning stuff directly. You're taking notes just like we did in school. But I've said this multiple times. It's what happens around the meeting afterwards, and down in the hotel lobby where you just run into some guy that you've been conversing with on Facebook for a year. You love his ideas, but you've never met face to face, and you have a drink, and just organically things start to happen. I think, I personally, that is the greatest value of an in-person meeting, are those organic relationships that start to develop. And I don't think there's any better way than being in physical proximity to the main event. Additionally, I know through these meetings, I'll go through a couple of wardrobe changes here and there. I like to try to squeeze in, an hour or two at the gym, and having all of my stuff within walking distance, or I don't even have to leave the building to get that done, just makes it so much more doable to coordinate everything. I don't really understand why someone would not. It's already a discounted rate. Your points. Come on, do you really need points? You already got like a 25% off of a room right where the venue's happening. I would absolutely go there every single time, whether or not I'm organizing a meeting.
So let's go on to talk about personalities, because
I love it.
we had dinner. I don't remember where was I? Where you and I and a few others had dinner? Where was that? Do you remember? I know it
That
was
was
Arizona.
it was Arizona. It was North Scottsdale at our favorite restaurant, Dominic's Steakhouse. And anyone coming to we're actually having our meeting next year in Scottsdale, and we might do a little dinner there. But anyone who's in Scottsdale, I highly recommend you check this place out. It is our favorite. Chris Teeters and I go there all the time. A lot of people may not know Chris and I live about 5 minutes from each other, so we
Nice.
we see each other quite a bit. And Dominic's has been our favorite for the better part of 3 years now.
Great restaurant.
Really great. And
Great meal.
and then we met with a bunch of the orthopreneurs. I think it was the RD group.
Is that what I couldn't remember? That's what I was saying. I couldn't remember why we were there, but it was me and Doug and Akash, I think, was there. I think there were a few others, but there were a lot of us at that table. And I can't remember. Oh, I remember what it was. We were in our Orthopreneurs RD was doing a private meeting with Stu Frost.
Oh,
And
okay.
if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, I think that's what it was. And I think the night before was Kyle. Kyle was there as well, right? It was
Kyle
me,
was there, yeah.
Kyle, Doug, Akash, and a whole bunch of other RD members. And we were sitting around the table. And the point of this story isn't to name drop. It's just you got two friends here talking about how we ended up having dinner. But we were talking about personality testing, and Kyle's, oh yeah, I'm this, and I'm this, and I was like, I don't remember what I am. So I went home and promptly took my test, and it's MBTI, right? Is 16 personalities?
Yeah, Myers-Briggs Type Index. Yep,
yeah,
that's a 16 personalities.
And I turned out that I'm an architect, which is an INTJ, and I learned later I'm an INTJ-A, not a T. I'm not turbulent. I remember assertive, I think, is the A, if I'm not mistaken.
Assertive.
And right. The INTJ is introvert, right?
Introvert, intuitive, thinking and judging.
And so at first I sort of sat there and go, this is not me. And I sort of tore into it a little bit because I know you're a strong advocate of it, as are many others. I started to question myself, like, is this stuff legitimate or not? And the more I started looking at it, unlike sort of a psychic reading where the person says, do you know anybody with the name that starts with an S? Oh, yeah. Did you ever have a parent? Yes. You start believing what they're telling you. It really was kind of dead on. And I know I fought you on it initially, but most people who don't know me don't realize that I really am an introvert. I do not like to go to parties where there's 1,000 people. I want one-on-one meetings, or I don't want to even go to the party. I want to stay home with my wife and watch a movie, or go to a movie with her, or go to a bar and have just drinks with her. I don't want to be around a huge crowd. I do it. It's part of my life, and connecting people makes me very, very happy. But the INTJ was kind of dead on. I like rationality, not emotion.
Hmm.
And I'd love for you to discuss a little bit about how you stumbled on this, how it became a big
Sure.
part of your life, and how you use it in your day-to-day practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Well, first of all, just to touch on what you said about being an introvert, but I mean, when I learned that you were an introvert, it actually surprised me. I think a
I
lot of
remember.
people would be surprised to know that Glenn Krieger up there on stage and having his own podcast and multiple Facebook groups and study clubs, it would surprise many people to find that you are an introvert. Kyle Fagla is the same one, INTJ, and
Is he?
you would
I didn't know
not.
that.
He is. Yep, he's the same. He's the same one.
So is Michelle
Uh,
Obama. I looked it up. Not only Michelle Obama, but Katniss Everdeen. I don't know.
Okay, well,
I don't
who her husband is, who Barack Obama. He's actually an ENTP, which is what I am. So that's an
know.
interesting combination.
ENTP.
ENTP and INTJ generally get along pretty well.
Well, my favorite is that I found out through their website. They give you all these like real people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michelle Obama,
Yeah,
Colin Powell, Christopher Nolan, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera. And then they give you a list. I'm looking at it now. Walter White,
yeah,
Heisenberg, Peter Baelish,
yeah,
Littlefinger from Game of Thrones,
yeah,
Tywin
yeah,
Lannister, right? Gandalf the Grey. So, and
yeah,
Professor Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. And I'm sitting here going,
yep.
how do they give the test to Professor Moriarty?
Well, it's interesting not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but just to touch on that with these fictional characters. Most of them are written with MBTI in mind, MBTI and Enneagram. A lot of
I didn't know that.
screenwriters, yeah, absolutely, and you can see this when you study MBTI a little bit, and even Enneagram. Grant Collins is the Enneagram guy, but we've had some good discussions, and that's another fascinating one. Has more to do with your motivation than just your actions.
I'm an
But when you
8, by
start
the
to,
way.
I'm also an eight.
I
Do you know your
figured.
wing?
I used to. It's been years. I used to be
Okay.
really into it, and then
Okay.
it just faded away.
It's fascinating. That one goes deep because then that's your like core drivers and your core. So two people could have the same action or behave the same way, but they're doing it for different reasons. And that's what Enneagram explores. So
And
again, another really
when you're
fascinating one.
stressed, when you put under
Mhm.
stress, other
Yeah.
facets come out at the same time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a lot of these screenwriters they think of personality types, archetypes when they're writing their characters, and I think that makes it so much. They that's where their characters feel so real and so relatable. We all have these characters we relate to, and the best characters go deep into these personality archetypes. I'm sorry, we got a little sidetracked on that. Your question was,
How did you get into this?
how did I get into it?
And how do you use it on a day to day in your practice?
The way I got into this, I remember I just came across a meme. It was a Star Wars meme of all things, and it had a bunch of Star Wars characters and then these little four-letter combinations that said, guess which one you are, and or some test or something like that. And I kind of go in for this stuff. These were really popular back in the day. Those little tests on Facebook.
Right.
But this one, I decided I wanted to go a little deeper than just clicking on the button and getting a random one, and took the test on 16personalities.com and found that I was ENTP, which is R2D2 of all things. I was kind of hoping for a Jedi Knight or something, but no, I got R2D2. And when I read my profile, it was just like, holy cow, like this is exactly who I am. But I was reading this, I'm thinking, well, isn't everyone like that? Like it doesn't seem like just me. So I started reading the other personality types, and then I started recognizing, oh, wait a minute, these are ways that I actually do perceive the world differently. I prioritize things differently. And it was really eye-opening to me, almost like I'm looking at a mirror of myself and seeing my own reflection for the first time. And this is
Interesting.
where I found personality type, specifically MBTI, to be very valuable for introspection, learning the things that make me different, both positive and also negative, and identifying ways that I can harness my strengths, and then also identifying areas that I needed to work on. I think that this is the core of leadership, is that self-awareness. When you look into MBTI, it'll tell you a little bit about the type of leader you are, as well as the type of follower you are, which one you gravitate towards. And I recognized early on how this applied in my practice. We had, this was fairly early on in my startup, and we were experiencing some turnover, and it was very frustrating. And I remember we brought on an assistant from my wife's side hustle or side practice, and she got along very, very well with my wife, but she and I had some friction. And my wife would come to me all the time saying, "Hey, you need to slow down with your changes. The staff is complaining that you're changing things too much. They can't keep up." And I remember feeling very frustrated by that, saying, well, if I figured out a better way of doing something, why am I going to continue to do it the wrong way? Well, we have to keep evolving. And what I learned through MBTI is that that is inherent to my personality. I like to rework the system. I'm always looking for different ways of doing things, thinking outside the box, constantly upgrading. One of the fictional characters who shares my personality type is Tony Stark, and you
Hmm.
notice that he's always upgrading his suits. He's always changing things. He mentions I'm kind of an Avengers nerd, so
It's
in
okay.
Avengers 2, he talks about creating a suit of armor around the world. Everything is very protectionistic and thinking ahead, trying to solve problems before they've arose. And what I recognized is my team was more of stabilizing personalities, and they just want to be told what it is and told the right way to do something and then just execute on that. And when I was constantly coming in with new ideas, it was just chaos for them. From their perspective, they could not keep up. So I recognized that I had to not completely temper that proclivity, because it is important, and that is what differentiates us, is that we're never doing the same thing next year that we're doing this year. We're constantly evolving. But on the other hand, I need to attenuate that in a way that is digestible among my team, knowing that they prefer a more stable set pattern. And additionally, as time goes on, I look for people who can roll with that a little bit more. So as we get new team members, I specifically now interview for people who are comfortable with that kind of change, because that is part of our DNA, part of my DNA, and then by translation, the practice's DNA. That's one aspect. I think another big value of MBTI in the practice is with conflict resolution. We have created a culture where we all understand both our own personality type as well as those around us. And especially when we come into conflict, we really break out the profiles and look at how our actions are being perceived, how our reactions might stem from something a little deeper, stemming from a trigger, and recognizing that that trigger may not be rational. Maybe that's something that we need to attenuate our response. And then also, if someone caused that trigger, then being aware of that dynamic. So I think conflict resolution and leadership would be the top applications for MBTI,
Does
at
it
least in
play
my practice.
does it play any role in the hiring process in the sense that you wouldn't hire somebody because of a certain personality type, or does it not
Yeah.
play a role in the
Yeah.
hiring? It just helps you better understand them.
So it absolutely does not play a role in our hiring process. In fact, it's illegal to screen specifically on personality type for hiring. The one test that you can do that with is Colby, which tests your modus operandi. Have you studied Colby at all? Familiar
I've
with
done
that?
that.
Yeah.
I've done that as well. Yes.
Colby's an interesting one. But yeah, so that one you can screen for, but you're actually not permitted to screen for applicants based on their personality type. Now, having said that, you go through this enough, and in the same way that education really is about focusing your mind on the right things, when you study personality types, it focuses your mind to look for behaviors or patterns among people. So you can kind of guess someone's type if you get really good at it. But I don't necessarily do that. I don't try to type someone right in the interview, but I do look for certain things like, are they open to change? And I ask questions that indicate whether they are flexible in that regard, or whether they're very dogmatic and rigid. And I'm not saying that I would turn away someone who's very rigid, but I'm going to look for them in a specific role, and I'm going to have to talk to them a certain way that's maybe different from the way I would talk to someone who's a little more freewheeling, a little more flexible. So it's not necessarily a direct screening tool, but it sort of focuses you and can be an indirect. It focuses you on aspects of a person that you may or may not want to hire for. Hopefully, that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Do you ever have regrets about having used a personality that where you thought you knew somebody, but maybe it
Mm,
wasn't, it didn't work out the way you expected? Oh, they're not really an INTJ. I thought they were.
mm.
Is it easily solved? And I guess the most important question is, do the team members buy into this? Like, or
Oh yeah,
does anybody ever resent it and say, I don't want to be
yeah,
labeled. I can't believe you labeled me this way. This is so not
yeah,
who I am. I'm not this at all. Right? Like
yeah.
just totally defensive about it.
Well, here's the way that I approach it in my office is it's not mandatory for anyone to take this test. I was very excited about this, and I'm telling them all about this stuff, and I'm encouraging them like, hey, if you want to learn about yourself, go check this out, and if you feel comfortable sharing, let's share and let's discuss. And there was an initial resistance. There always is. It's so strange. Anytime you bring up personality types, there's always a little bit of resistance. I think a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier, equate it with astrology, or zodiac, something like that. But eventually, I think they saw me so excited about it, so they decided they wanted to learn more. And then when they read their profiles, they were blown away by how accurate it was, and they want to share with people. The fact of the matter is, most of us want to be seen. We want to be understood. Describing your personality in such objective detail is a great way for other people to understand you. And I think that that's what drives a lot of people who take it. So again, I don't mandate it in my office, but everyone has taken the test and everyone is fairly open about sharing this. And especially as they've started to see some of the benefits, because we have conflict in our office just like anyone else. But when that conflict can be explained through the lens of Myers-Briggs, they see this value and they see how we're able to maintain a cohesive team through understanding each other. So it's a voluntary thing. I wouldn't say, again, I'm not the one typing them, so there's no offense taken that you got me wrong and that's not who I am. It's coming from them. They're sharing with me what they want to share, and we treat it like a discussion among the team. So I haven't run into any kind of defensiveness there, but I could see applying it a certain way how that could be construed that way. I would again recommend making it voluntary, and you'll avoid a lot of that kind of friction, I believe.
Well, I always appreciate having you around. I think you're one of the great voices in our profession. Um, is registration open for 2024 Mother of Pearls?
So I was just checking the website, and I am not sure that the registry it is open. The website's a little bit tricky, but you can go to just type in MOPC motherpearls.org. And the conference is going to be October 10th through 12th at the Talking Stick Arena here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm kind of hoping we make an alternating Scottsdale venue. I think that would be cool. It's a great time of year to be out in Arizona. The weather could not be better. This year we're going to have some bull riding and a bunch of Western themed activities. It's going to be a blast. I hope you can make it, Glenn. I know you're busy around that time of year, but I'd love to see you out here. Maybe we can go to Dominic's again.
I will check my schedule for sure. October 10th to 12th, you said?
10th through 12th. That's right.
2024. Anybody who's interested in going, sign up. You guys can find it easily online, but definitely go check it out. Great people.
Orthodonticpearls.org.
Orthodonticpearls.org. There you go.
That's correct.
Thank you so much for being here today, Andy. I appreciate your insight on everything. And everybody knows they can reach you on Facebook if they want to get a hold of you.
That's right.
So thanks for being here, my man, and just wishing you and the family continued success and happiness and lots of joy from Chloe.
Of course. Thanks so much, Glenn. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure as always.